Welcome to another North-South podcast. Today we have a special guest joining us, Joe Crann. Joe is a well-known soccer pundit in South Africa who's a regular contributor for the likes of Soccer Laduma and Supersport and has to be one of the go-to people when football is involved. Joe won the 2015 Bookmarks Young Gun Award and is an avid Sheffield Wednesday supporter. Let's get into it. So thank you for joining us this evening. And yeah, we are very excited to be able to speak to you tonight.
It's a pleasure to have you, Joe.
It's a pleasure.
Do you want to go ahead, Alistair, with some of your first opening remarks?
Joe, I've been following you for quite a while on social media, so I get to see what an exciting life you live. I've obviously seen that in some of your media postings, you grew up in Yorkshire. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what that was like growing up in the north of England.
Cold for the most part. I mean, look, I grew up in Yorkshire. I was obviously born there and first life in Yorkshire. One of the things that I do miss about home, and I think I'll always miss about home, is the people. I think Yorkshire's known for the friendliness of the people there, and I mean, I grew up in a household where we were taking foreign students from the age of when I was probably about 8. So I've been constantly surrounded by new people, different cultures, different languages. And I think a lot of what I've sort of achieved at this point in my life is down to that upbringing that I had with my mum and dad back home in Yorkshire, because they were always very open and always very eager for me and my little brother to meet new people and learn about different places and the different cultures around the world. So, I mean, like I say, Yorkshire is typically a very working class city. Got famous back in the day for the steel industry. Lots of cutlery still made there. But yeah, so that's, like I say, that's basically the thing that Sheffield is most famous. That and the Full Monty. I don't know if you've heard of the film The Full Monty. That's basically it. And obviously, one of the things that people talk about with Sheffield is the fact that it's technically the birthplace of football. The very first football club in the world was formed in Sheffield. So I like to think that I'm born in the birthplace of the greatest sport in the world.
Of course, I have to agree with you in that sense. Football is definitely the greatest sport in the world. Obviously, anyone who knows anything about you knows that football played a major part in your life growing up. Perhaps if you could tell us a bit about your early days, maybe your first memory at Hillsborough Stadium, perhaps a Steel City derby. Perhaps was that something that stood out for you growing up?
The very first football game I went to at Hillsborough was actually something that tied me to South Africa. It was Sheffield Wednesday against Leeds United, and Lucas Radebe was
Radebe, of course, yes.
So Lucas, it's crazy for me that so many years later, more than 20 years later now, Lucas is a guy that I call my friend. This guy that I regularly see at different events. He always makes sure to come and say hello, and we'll talk a little bit of nonsense about Sheffield Wednesday and Leeds, because there's a big rivalry there. I think it's that for me is one of my first main memories. I mean, I went with my dad Wednesdayites as well. So that was, like I say, that's something that's always sort of resonated with me. I think my favourite memory, especially from a Wednesday perspective, was watching us win the League One playoff final. I think I was probably about 17, and we beat Hartlepool in the final. We played in Cardiff, and I think it was about 80% Wednesdayites, and that was a great day out. I think that's, like I say, that's probably my best memory as a football fan. I mean, I've been to World Cup finals, I've done AFCONs, I've done all that kind of stuff.
Of course, yes.
But I don't think nothing is ever going to beat that feeling that I had at that Hartlepool game in Cardiff. Unless we win another playoff final and go back to the Premier League, maybe that'll top it.
Of course, yes. Well, as a youngster, did you guys ever venture across to Bramall Lane for any of those matches?
Yeah, no, I've been to Bramall Lane plenty of times, unfortunately. My uncle's a big blade. So I always grew up with just a love of football. So I mean, I went to lots of stadiums around the country. I followed England for a long time. I went to watch England in France and Holland and Europe. And I think one of the things that for me was I just love the environment of football games. I love the singing and the sort of camaraderie that's there. And I think one of the things that really stood out for me growing up was just to feel part of something. And I think that you have people from all different walks, different colours, different creeds, different cultures. They're all there to support a team, and it's a little bit of a nonsense, really. If you bring it down to the core of it, it doesn't really mean much, but it really means the world as well. So I think that, like I say, for me growing up, I used to go to a lot of Newcastle games. My friend's uncle was a season ticket holder at Newcastle, so I went to St James's a lot. Been to Ellen Road a few times. Obviously, been to Wembley watching England. So I went to a lot of football grounds growing up, and I was never too proud to go take a seat in Bramall Lane if there was a decent game on.
Sure. I love that you mentioned a bit earlier about Lucas Radebe. Of course, 256 matches for Leeds. Quite a household name probably in Yorkshire, and probably the most famous South African, perhaps, in that region of the country.
Probably the most famous African. I mean,
oh, wow,
Lucas in Leeds is like a god. I mean, there's after him. There's a suite named after him at Ellen Road. I mean, the way that, I mean, look, Kaiser Chiefs, the band, is named because of Lucas. I mean, the guy is worshipped in Leeds, and rightly so. I mean, he was, for me, growing up in that period, there was a point when I think Lucas was probably top 3 centre backs in the world.
I'd agree with that for sure. Yes,
there was many when he was at his peak. I don't think there was many better than him, and look, he turned down Man United to stay at Leeds, and I think that meant a lot to the Leeds fans there. And my granddad is a Leeds fan, so my other granddad, sorry, he's a Leeds fan. So I used to go to Ellen Road a couple of times with him, and I was lucky enough to watch Wednesday at Ellen Road against Leeds. So I got to watch Lucas play a couple of times, and I think it was only when I came here, and I got to know Lucas a little bit, that you really understand why the man is so highly regarded. Because I mean, he's just stupidly nice, and Lucas he would be well within his rights to be a bit of an arsehole and be a bit full of himself and not take time to talk to people, but he's the polar opposite of that. I mean, whenever I've been anywhere with Lucas, he always makes sure he takes all the time in the world to take pictures and to talk to people. And I was watching some of Chipper Messinger's funeral service today, and Lucas was in tears, and you can see it's genuine. He's just a genuine person who happened to be very, very good at football at one point.
Yeah, I mean, of course, rest in peace to Philemon Messinga. A great loss for South African football. But Joe, of course, you mentioned when you were talking about Lucas, one of the best 3 centre backs in the world at that time. Would you perhaps put a man you've met, Roberto Carlos, on the left of that?
Yeah, I mean, Roberto, it's weird. Like with Roberto Carlos, he was the kind of the quintessential left back for me growing up. I mean, when I was sort of my formative years as a football fan, when I was sort of 8, 9, 10 years old, he was playing for Brazil and he was at Madrid, and he was just a bulldozer. I mean, there weren't many better left foots in the world when he was around. I mean, probably still there can't be many better than his. I remember sitting and watching loads of videos of him scoring from the byline and stuff like that. I mean, some of the stuff that Roberto Carlos did was insane. I mean, I think we've had some good left backs in our sort of, I don't know how old they are, but in my lifetime we've had some really good left backs, and I think Roberto Carlos is definitely up there. He's when you meet him in person, he's very short. I'm not a tall person, and he's shorter than me, but he's just kind of full of life and very bubbly. The first time I actually spoke to him, I did an interview with him over Skype, and he doesn't speak a word of English, so we had a translator, and I was sat on my couch at home with Roberto Carlos on my laptop, which was a little bit surreal for me, having watched him do what he did growing up.
Yeah, Joe, 2 quick things I wanted to pick your brain on before Darren has a bit of a word with you about the current Premier League season. Obviously, you met Roberto Carlos' teammate at that point in time, David Beckham. Was that just a fleeting moment, or did you perhaps manage to have a word or two with him?
Oh no, that was incredibly fleeting. I mean, he is the superstar of superstars in the football industry. I mean, you don't find many bigger than him. I mean, even if you look at Ronaldo and Messi now, they've kind of followed on from what Beckham did, and I think he was the pioneer of this whole football celebrity culture that we've got. We've got the Pogbas and we've got the Neymars now, but I think all of those will look at Beckham and look at him as the pioneer of that. And I think one thing that he's become very, very good at is making sure everybody feels like they've not been undersold when you meet him. And Matt, I mean, I met him at the Discovery Conference, and it was literally just a picture moment. That was it. I'm hoping that he doesn't remember. So one day when I do get to interview him properly, he won't just remember me as that weird fan in South Africa.
I expected that to be the case. David Beckham is well renowned for being quite a humanitarian and quite a respectable human being. But in my slight research into you, I see you managed to fit in 9 different countries in 1 year. Did you manage to pick up any languages? You were talking about Roberto Carlos, and obviously you couldn't speak any Portuguese with him. Anything language-wise that you managed to pick up in those 9 different countries?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's not the most I've done. I did 11 in 2011 when I did like a trip around the world, which was one thing I always wanted to do growing up. One of the reasons it actually led me to move to South Africa. The first on that year-long trip that I did was the World Cup year in 2010, and I was working for Soccer Duma as an intern at the time. I did a month, and after that, they offered me a job. So that kind of that trip was the sort of catalyst for me moving here permanently. But like I say, with languages, I'm never really anywhere long enough.
Makes sense.
I did learn a little bit of Brazilian Portuguese when I was there. I stayed there for about 3 months in Niterói, which is just over the bay from Rio. So I spoke a little bit of Brazilian Portuguese. When I do go back there, I pick up little bits again. But I think the best way to learn any kind of language is through immersion. And the problem that I've got as an English person, and it's an issue that every English person speaking in the world, well, not every, but a lot have, is that it's easy to speak English. Most people speak it, so you become lazy, and I think it's one of the reasons why we have this arrogant stereotype that British and American people have, for instance, because nobody bothers to learn any other languages. And I've got a lot of respect for the people that do, because I mean, I speak little bits of French and I speak little bits of Spanish, enough to sound like a baby. Basically, I can say things like "where toilet" and kind of that kind of thing.
But Joe, after plus minus 7 years, how's your Afrikaans after about 7 years in Gauteng?
My girlfriend's Afrikaans, but they basically, the only thing I can say is "luister vir jou ma," because that's basically what a mum tells her to do all the time.
Yeah.
And then a few other words that I probably can't say on the show. So, but yeah, the thing with Afrikaans especially is that I do find that when I hear it, there are little bits that do sound kind of English. They're like deformed English words a little bit. So based on that and the context in which it's said, there are little bits I can understand the sort of meaning. I know if Steph's annoyed at me and she's saying something Afrikaans, I can usually understand what it is I've done wrong.
Yeah, I think something like an "ach man" or something like something
weirdly
like that.
Weirdly, I've started saying that. I do say it, which I never said before.
What about "ja," "ja" instead of "ya"?
No, that's very easy to slip in. In Yorkshire, we shorten everything, and then "ja" is shorter and lazier. So that fits right into my my agenda of trying to say as little as possible.
Yeah,
wait, sorry, Darren. Before I let Darren take over, just one more quick thing. Obviously, you live in Gauteng, you live in Joburg, and obviously you've been around to many different countries. You've been to the best of the best stadiums. Obviously, the best stadium in the world, the best of them all, Stamford Bridge. I think that might give a hint of where my allegiance lies. Obviously, you've been to San Siro and places like that. The question that I was really interested in asking you, Joe, is at full tilt, at full capacity with the crowd pumping, how does F&B Stadium in Joburg match up to those other, legendary places?
I think that the thing that always amazes me with F&B especially, well, I say especially, it's only ever on Soweto Derby Day. It's the only time that that stadium fills up. I mean, you get quite close if Chiefs play Sundowns, for instance, or there's a final there. But the thing that always fascinates me about the Soweto Derby is just it's a unique experience, a genuinely unique experience. I mean, there is nowhere else in the world where you find a rivalry like that, where the fans are able to sit next to each other and there's no hassle. Well, I mean, there's little bits, but for the most part, there's no hassle. The fans sit there unsegregated, and it's amazing. And there is a little part of me, I do like the idea of a chunk of fans sitting together and singing together. But the Soweto Derby really is a unique experience, and to see a team going out there like they do with Chiefs and Pirates, going at each other for 90 minutes, and at the end of the game, you see people walking out of the stadium with each other. I just think it's amazing, and I think it shows a lot about sort of the way South Africa is as a country.
Yeah, and maybe I can just jump in, and one of the questions I thought of while listening now, as a South African who's come over to the UK for a change of lifestyle, there aren't as many British that go in the opposite direction like you have. So I'd be interested to know why you chose South Africa when you did. If there was any particular reason for it, or was it just kind of an instinct kind of choice?
No, I mean, look, I'll be honest with you, it was opportunity. I was 20 years old. I came here and did an internship when I was 19. At the end of that, they offered me a job, and that's literally what it came down to. I mean, I'd been accepted into uni in the UK, and I had a choice of either going to university or going to university to study to be a journalist. So I made the decision when I was, like I say, I moved here permanently at 21. The plan was maybe come for a year. If it works out, stick around a bit longer. If it doesn't, I'll go home. And 7 years later, I'm still here.
Right. So it definitely worked out in your favor, and I'm pretty sure, you're glad for the choices you did make.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think with life, there's always things that you wish you'd done differently. There's sometimes I think what would have happened if I stayed at home, what would have happened if I'd gone to a different country. But I mean, look, I came here, I've been here for 8 years now. I've got some amazing friends. I met my girlfriend here. We've been together for a long time now as well. And I think that for my career, I do in life as well, I think it was the right move. Like I say, there's always going to be regrets with everything you do. Not necessarily regrets, but there's always going to be that sort of what if in the back of your head. But from, like I say, from my side, I don't regret coming here. I don't think I made the wrong decision. I mean, South Africa's a great country, and I think it's made me a better, wiser person by being here.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think South Africa is probably the best country in the world. Always be. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I missed you.
Joe, I see you have a partnership with Betway, which is the outlet I used to do my betting in South Africa. I quite like them. I see they introduced the cash out option as well recently.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a really nice, something I've been asking them about for a long time, because obviously it's a big thing in the UK. So I'm glad they've added that in now, because the amount of times that I lose my bet on one game, that's basically why I was asking, because I was sick of losing.
Yeah. So I see you give your 5-way bet prediction. How wide of a view do you take in making that 5-way bet? Do you look at every possible league, or do you narrow it down to the ones where you can get a bit more reliable statistics going for those leagues?
Look, I mean, whenever I make my picks, it's there's always going to be a little bit of thumbs up there, because I mean, it's football. The amount of times that I've lost a bet because the top of the league team is drawn with a team that's 19th. That happens sometimes. But no, I think with me, like I'm a big fan of stats. I like to try and throw in the both team to score option. So there's actually a website I use that you can go and check what percentage of games these teams have had where they've had BTTS on it. Like I think at FC Basel, I've got a 90% both teams to score this season. For a long while, Sheffield Wednesday were up there as well because we were but scoring at least one. That just seemed to be what we were doing.
Yeah. Speaking of Sheffield Wednesday, I don't think we'll bring up the championship log. Perhaps when we have you on the podcast again, I think in the next season we can bring that up.
Yeah, maybe.
And maybe one of the things that, I wouldn't mind talking about, especially because it's one of the teams I've followed for most of my life. That's Manchester United. And their recent turnaround of 7 wins on the trot, Premier League. If you can just speak on that turnaround and whether or not you think that he's got any chance of staying on as manager going into the next season.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you have that kind of start to a club like Man United, I mean, it's the best ever start to any coach at that club, and I mean, in that kind of situation, I think a chance. I personally don't think they will stick with Solskjaer. I think he was always brought in as a someone to come in and steady the ship, and who knew the club and knew the way that it worked, and you can see by the freedom that he's given the players, and you can see that he is. He's come in with an ideology of we're Man United. You're the ones who've got to beat us, not the other way around. And I think that's shown with the players they've got there. I mean, Pogba looks like a completely different player. He's playing with a vigor that you didn't really see much of, and I think there's been a lot said about his style and the fact that he did kind of seem to spit his dummy out a little bit under Mourinho, but you've got to look at both sides of the coin, and sure, there's a little bit of a little bit to be said about the way he, I suppose, underperformed. Creative license was he given, and I don't think we'll ever really know that.
Yeah, I definitely from the games I've watched, I think I've watched the last 3 of their games. I definitely see a whole different change in the freedom of play, and the players are definitely allowed more leeway to express themselves on the field, which is
completely
always great to see, and they definitely come into their own with that. And then maybe moving towards the top of the league table then, and looking at Liverpool and their chances of possibly winning the league this year, and the impact of Mo Salah. Maybe you can just give us a bit of a breakdown of what you think Liverpool have to do to win it. Do you think they will? It seems to be a 2-horse race at the moment with Man City and Liverpool. I think are probably the ones to win. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, I mean, look, at things that seem to be going Liverpool's way that do stand out in a championship winning season. I mean, you look at what happened in this last game, to come back the way they did. That sort of thing that champions do, and I think that it's been a long time coming from Liverpool. And one of the things that I love about this Liverpool team is just how exciting they are to watch. I mean, you look at the guys within that side, and I'm really happy that Mo Salah's kept it going. I think there was a lot of people said he was going to be a one-season wonder, but Salah has really kicked off. He's just kept going at that level, and I don't think he's quite as enjoyable to watch maybe this season as he was last season, but he's keeping the goals coming, and he's playing his role incredibly well. And I think that he probably feels more part of a team this year compared to the Liverpool that we saw last season. Even though they did reach the Champions League final, I think that there's just something a little bit stronger about this Liverpool side, and having some of the leaders that they have, like your Virgil van Dijks, it makes a massive difference to this squad. And I think that they now seem to be finding that balance of we've seen Liverpool teams in the past where they've been great at scoring goals but awful at defending them, and this season they seem to have, like I say, found that balance.
So, Joe, is it safe to say that if we can get a prediction from you, perhaps on the winner of this year's Premier League, it probably would be Liverpool, right?
At this point, yeah. I mean, I think unless they really throw things away, but I mean, we've seen that before. We've seen that. So it's not sort of beyond the realms of doubt. But I do think that this Liverpool team is too good, and I think that their coach is too savvy to let that happen.
And if perhaps you could maybe just, even though at this maybe three-quarter point of the season, maybe just throw in another 3 teams there who make it to Champions League.
I mean, look, I think if we look at what we've seen, I mean, Man City are going to be there without a shadow of a doubt. The other one, I think, is pretty open. I mean, I think Spurs are looking really strong. The Harry Kane absence will hurt them, but I mean, they got the result they needed this weekend without him, and I think that they've got enough quality on that side to move on. So I think, I mean, Spurs have been a really good side to watch for a couple. They're just missing that trophy that it takes to stand apart.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. But moving on to something a little bit more of your style, I'm a big Arctic Monkeys fan. And obviously, being a Yorkshireman, I was hoping you'd be the same, and I was happy to see that. Thanks. I wanted you to just rate some of my 2 favorite albums of theirs. Favorite Worst Nightmare from 2007, and How's About This for a Name for everyone listening out there. Whatever people say I am, that's what I'm not.
Yeah.
And yeah, some of my favorite tracks coming from those. Fluorescent Adolescent, Old Yellow Bricks, I Bet You Look Good on the Dance Floor. So do you think I've basically got the crux of what the Arctic Monkeys are about?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think anyone is really going to understand what the Arctic Monkeys are about because Alex Turner's a nutcase. But but now, like, I mean, look, for me, they're a band that I grew up with. They are, I suppose, the soundtrack of my youth. Their first album came out when I was about 16. You mentioned Old Yellow Bricks there. I've actually got one of the Old Yellow Bricks tattooed on the lyrics tattooed on my arm. They're a band that mean a lot to me. When I was in America now in October, I organised a trip around going through to Dallas when they played in Dallas, just so I could see them again. I haven't seen them since I was probably 19. So, like I say, they're a band that means a lot to me, and they've sort of helped me through some tough times in my life. And to be honest, I am slightly biased because they're from Sheffield, but I do think that Alex Turner's possibly the greatest lyricist of our generation. I think that he's the closest we have to a John Lennon and a Paul McCartney.
And Joe, if I could ask you, I definitely would say so, but would you agree with me in saying that the drums on Views from the Afternoon is probably, I don't know, top 10 in any rock song?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of good drum solos in the whole Arctic Monkeys album. I think for me it's difficult with music because it's all about mood. It all depends on what you're looking for. I mean, you look at, say, the drums in the Air Tonight by Phil Collins, and that's like an iconic one. You've got so many drum solos in Queen songs, for instance, and I look, I think, like I say, for me, I am a little bit biased, and View from the Afternoon is amazing, but there are, for me, a lot of drum solos out there. I've been lucky enough to see some of these guys live. I remember watching Bullet for My Valentine in Australia and watching from above the drummer. We were backstage and on the roof, basically, and watching these guys from that kind of vantage point is incredible. Drummers make no sense to me. I don't understand how you can maneuver that quickly. And Matt Helders is, like I say, one of the greatest drummers in my lifetime for sure. But there is always going to be that little bit of bias there for me.
But Joe, I have to beg you, if you have any pull whatsoever with the Arctic Monkeys, you've got to get them down here. You really, really have to.
I don't think it'll happen anytime soon. I think their fees too much.
Oh, Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, my man.
No, thank you very much for having me. It's always nice to chat about things that aren't necessarily always football.
I think you're a very interesting character. You like Darren said earlier, you don't come across many people. The immigration flow is usually in the opposite direction. So
yeah.
So like as a South African, we have a lot of respect for you for dealing with some of the nonsense that daily life brings in this country. So you just take it in your stride.
Look, I mean, there's nothing else you can do, mate. I mean, when you come to a country like South Africa, you've got to realise what it's like. You've got to understand the sort of complexities of here, and that's why I said earlier that I think South Africa has made me a better person, because there's a lot of things that I've sort of grown to understand here, especially about something like race and the racial issues around the world, and privilege and all that kind of stuff. The things that I'm not sure I would have had the same chance to get to grips with had I stayed in the UK. And it's one of the things that I'm, I suppose, most grateful for about my time in South Africa, and the people that I surround myself with are all very very forward-thinking people, and people that not only want to learn, but are willing to help me learn to be a better person as well. And I think it's one thing that we have to deal with in this modern world, because things are changing so quickly, and there's so many negative people around that we have to learn to try and understand things from different people's perspectives. And I think that South Africa is very much a place of different perspectives. And like I say, you've got to adapt quickly here. And I like to think that one of the reasons that I have done so well here is because of the fact that I have adapted to my surroundings so well.
Joe, finally, before we let you go, I think I left the most touchiest question for last. Obviously, Joe, Lucas Radebe is your friend. As South Africans, we've slowly but surely watched the national team go from ranking around 20th and being the pride of the continent to slipping into the, I don't even know where it is now. As South Africans, we're a bit frightened to look 60s, 70s. I mean, that's a bit scary. And I just wanted to get your thoughts before you leave on, perhaps, obviously, South Africa is a lot more developed than most other African countries, especially when you look at countries like Central African Republic and countries of that sort of economic nature. How do you think it's able for them to consistently outperform us? How are we not using the development and the resources we have to our advantage to improve Bafana?
Look, I mean, it's a very complex question. There's a lot of things involved in the success and or failure of any national team. But I think one of the situations we have in South Africa is I don't think there is the desire to be better that there used to be. You talk about the guys coming from West Africa, Central Africa. You look at those guys and they're getting better because they need to. I mean, you look at guys like guys who've come from Ghana's and Nigeria's. They leave the country because it's the only way for them to make their fortune and make their living. Whereas I think, we're at a point now with South Africa where you've got guys in this country earning 5-6 bar a year to stay in the PSL, and I don't think that desire to leave is there anymore. The desire to be better, and I think you've got other guys coming from different parts of Africa whose goal is to play for Real Madrid and play for Barcelona or get as close as they can to doing that. Whereas for a lot of the time, I think here the goal is to play for Chiefs and Pirates, and then you're done. And I think that there's like I say, probably not enough desire to be better and to really be the best that they can be, which is why it is something that I look at now with this Bafana squad. And you look at your guys like Kamahela Mokocho and Bongani Zungu and Percy Tau, and there's a very, very promising group of players coming through, guys like Keegan Dole who've gone over to Europe and stuck it out there. I mean, Keegan's had his injury problems, Bongani's had his injury problems. They haven't sort of spat the dummies out and come back again. Kawan Mokocho has been over in Europe since he was about 18 years old, and I think they're the sort of players that you sort of need to be the spine of the team. And I think that there is a sort of a renewed optimism around the players coming through with Bafana. I mean, there's always going to be issues with selection because football is a club game. So you're always going to get Pirates fans not wanting Chiefs players there and vice versa. And there's always going to be people disagreeing with the coach. But I think that the sheer lack of consistency that we have in the national setup is a problem as well. I mean, you look at the chopping and changing that we've done in terms of players, in terms of coaching staff, and it's why it's so nice to see what Banyana are doing, because it took them a while, but they put faith in Desiree Ellis, and she's proven why she deserved it, and Des has done a great job with Banyana and with the group of players they've got there now, like Tembi and a lot of the other girls that are coming through. Banyana seem to be getting it right now, so I hope that we can find some similar kind of consistency with the national team. Look, I think that qualifying from the AFCON in March, when that final game is, would be a massive boost. And if they can get to this AFCON and make a good showing there, then I think that will really, really help the sort of general mood and maybe help even the desire to do well for the national team again.
Well, thank you so much, Joe Crann. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, sir. Obviously, guys, all the links in the descriptions for his various social medias.
Thanks for listening. You can find Joe at his handle, YesWeCran. Please remember to follow and subscribe to our different social media pages. Until next time, cheers.